So MK Party parliamentary leader Dr. John Hlophe has been elected to represent the National Assembly on the Judicial Service Commission. Now, Hlophe is among 6 members selected from 5 political parties to serve on the body which interviews and looks at complaints against judges. Hlophe, who is the impeached former Western Cape Judge President, is accused of trying to influence Constitutional Court justices in a matter pertaining to former President Jacob Zuma. EFF leader Julius Malema, the DA's Glynnis Breytenbach, the ANC's Fasiha Hassan, and Action SA's Athol Trollip will join Hlophe at the JSC. Professor Narnia Bohler-Muller, a Divisional Executive in the Developmental, Capable and Ethical State Research Division of the Human Sciences Research Council, joins us now for more on this move. Prof, good morning to you. Welcome to the AM Report, and thank you so much for joining us. I want to start with this. Were you expecting this outcome, that John Hlophe would make it onto the JSC?
No, to be quite honest, I didn't think that he would make it. I was surprised that the ANC decided to side with the EFF and MK, although it was on a technical point in that there was no rule to prevent him from sitting on the JSC. One has to look at things like ethics, like whether people sitting there are fit and proper to do the job that they're supposed to do. So I did not expect this to happen.
I mean, it's interesting, the time frames of it, right? I mean, you must think about how it was just at the beginning of this year that we saw his impeachment actually taking place. And now months later, he sits on the body that interviews and looks at complaints against judges. I mean, talk to us about, I don't know if you want to call it irony or poetry and that, right? And you actually wrote a piece about it around March, talking about, you know, some of the very first impeachments of our very democracy where judges are concerned.
Yes, that's right. I mean, he was one of 2 judges that was impeached by Parliament, and that recommendation was made by the Judicial Services Commission. And I think Julius Malema was actually a member of that very commission when that was done, and now he's been supporting Judge Hlophe's membership of the Judicial Services Commission, the very commission that recommended his impeachment. So I think this is quite problematic, and I think for numerous reasons. The first is the future of the Government of National Unity. You know, the DA was very much against Hlophe's appointment, saying he was not fit and proper. And the ANC decided to go with people who are not part of the GNU. So that was the first thing. The second is the independence of the judiciary and the politicization of the judiciary. So in my view, we should reconsider the number of politicians who sit on that body because they seem to take politics into the JSC and not necessarily the interests of the people, although they are members of Parliament, and that should be the first thing that they're thinking about. And of course, the rules of Parliament need to be changed so that we can not have this situation again. I mean, it really is quite ridiculous.
It's interesting because you talk about the politicizing of the JSC, and I wonder then just how important it is to have a synergized Judicial Service Commission. And what that means further down the line, right? So we can certainly talk about what it means and how all of them will relate to each other, and we'll get to that in a moment. But from a nuts and bolts point of view, when do you think that it does become a problem in how they operate in overseeing the judiciary?
Well, I think that, I mean, members of the judiciary, judges, would look at this appointment with a lot of skepticism. And those who go before the commission to be appointed may actually ask for his recusal because of the fact that, he tried to influence Constitutional Court judges in the arms deal scandal. And that really is very serious. It's not a small thing. So there could be issues around requests for his recusal, or if he's sitting in a situation where another judge is to be impeached, one would wonder, you know, what would be going through his mind at that time, because he's still believes that he should not be in the position that he's in, because as we know, he used the Stalingrad defense, as our former president, Jacob Zuma, did. He went to court a number of times to challenge the Judicial Services Commission. In fact, it took 16 years to impeach him. So I think this is something that judges would look at with skepticism, because they really do feel that their profession requires a certain kind of ethics. And potential candidates would also, I think, feel quite uncomfortable with him sitting in judgment of them.
Yeah. What do you make of the names that have been put forward and those that do make up the the National Assembly's representation on the JSC? John Hlophe, Julius Malema, Glynnis Breytenbach, Athol, Trollip, Fasiha, Hassan, and Mulabi Soviet Lekhanyani. So two from the ANC, Athol, Trollip of Action SA, the DA's Glynnis Breytenbach, and EFF's Julius Malema. The makeup of that list?
I think it's, I mean, other than Dr. Hlophe, the other members are, Julius Malema has been a member of the JSC before, and he's caused quite a lot of trouble while he was there, and he's going back. And as I say, he was on the commission when Judge Hlophe was impeached. Glynnis Breytenbach has a very long history as somebody who really believes in the rule of law and constitutionalism, and she's always a good choice. And some of the other members, the new members, I'm not sure how they will perform, but I know that there is a discretion to put forward the names that the political parties do. But again, those individuals, those members who've been appointed, really do need to go there with objectivity, and they need to make their decisions in the interests of the South African people to protect the integrity of the judiciary.
Yeah, you talk about the integrity of the judiciary, and one thing that you can't deny is there's almost been a battle over the last few years. I want to call it, for the soul of the judiciary, right? This argument that some have made around whether or not our judiciary is captured, and those words being used in political circles quite a bit. Very concerning about how the public views the integrity, again, of our judiciary. What do you think the inclusion of someone like John Hlophe does for that argument?
Well, it would probably confirm the perceptions that there are problems. I wouldn't say that it's a crisis. Our judiciary and our courts are still the most trusted institution in South Africa, although trust in the courts has declined over the years. But trust in politicians, in parliaments, has really gone down over the last 20 years. In fact, politicians' trust in terms of our research through the South African Social Attitude Survey is below 20%. And so, politicians will now sit in judgment of the judges, and there would be a perception created that there is an attempt to capture the judiciary, even if it hasn't been captured yet. I do not believe that is the case. But there may be an attempt to capture the judiciary, and this makes me think of Donald Trump in America. You can stack the court in your favor. And of course, people who are involved in state capture and corruption don't like the courts, because the courts hold them accountable. And so, we have this battle that's ongoing. I think even in the time of Chief Justice Mogoeng, he had to call the president and say to him, please do not interfere in the work of the courts. Yeah, just as we wrap up, and of course we don't have a lot of time, but you're seeing, of course, organizations like Freedom Under Law, the Council for the Advancement of the South African Constitution, or CASAC, Judges Matter, the Helen Suzman Foundation. I'm going to just go through the list here. Defend Our Democracy and the Ahmed Kathrada Foundation have written to
The Speaker of Parliament, of course, concerned about Hlophe's name on the order paper. What is next for organizations like that?
Well, the sad part is that the Speaker has not responded. I think this is serious enough to at least hear from the Speaker about the matter. And the voices of civil society are being drowned out a little bit. And we are looking at a situation where they are ignored to a large extent, even though they represent the interests of the South African public as much as anybody else does. It's a large group of civil society organizations and human rights defenders. And so the fact that they are not being taken seriously is of consequence to democracy in South Africa. And the whole issue of participatory democracy, people's voices. And people's voices are to be heard. And one of the ways that is done is through these kinds of organizations. And they're very important people who belong to these organizations who understand the political landscape. And so it is a pity that the Speaker did not respond to their concerns, and that the ANC itself decided to use the rules of Parliament as an excuse when ethics is just as important, and the fact that fit and proper people should be appointed to bodies like the Judicial Services Commission.
Yeah. Prof, we're going to leave it there. We really do appreciate your time, though. That was Professor Narnia Bohler-Muller, who is a Divisional Executive in the Developmental, Capable and Ethical State Research Division. That's, of course, with the Human Sciences Research Council.